Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Devin, Hasson, and Chris Jackson. It is a Monday afternoon. I guess this is our fourth quarantined episode. We were off last week so we could put together our all-area soccer team. Yes, even though the season ended earlier than anyone expected, we still are going to soldier on, put together our all-area team. That'll be out, I guess, in 2 weeks or so. So yes, be on the lookout for that. But yes, in the interim though, we are about halfway through our sports year in review series, and that means taking a look back at the school year that was for all 14 of our markets. I believe we've knocked out 6 of them when we last touched base, so we're going to focus on 4 today and then 4 next week to close up shop. Let's see, for today on the agenda, we have Allen, we have Flower Mound, Frisco, and The Colony. So we can start off by, one market that I think we can all kind of tag team a little bit, and that is Frisco. Obviously, the person who lorded over Frisco for all of the school year, Brian Murphy, he has moved on to greater pastures. In his absence, though, we have, let's see, as far as kind of what to make of the year with Frisco, it's there's a million high schools, so it's tough to go back and look at what each particular school did, individually. So I was just thinking as far as kind of like the bullet points, like the things that really kind of jump off the page that you're going to look back on 2019, 2020, and remember, in Frisco ISD athletics. And I don't know if you guys have any others that you wanted to add to this, but there were at the very least 3 that immediately jumped to mind, and that was the Lone Star football team, the Liberty girls basketball team, and then the Reedy distance running phenom Colleen Stegman. We can start talking a little bit of football. This was one that was obviously such a massive subplot in the fall with the run that Frisco Lone Star got on, as far as having one of their best seasons ever, spending most of the season ranked number 1 in the state in Class 5A Division I. And you really kind of think back to where that all really kind of took off, and it was that I believe it was the 3rd week of the season was that highly anticipated game at Highlander Stadium, when they became the first Texas team since 1998 to hand Highland Park a home loss. And just an incredible performance, a game that in hindsight, at least to hear, Brian tell the story, a game that wasn't all that competitive. I think the final score wound up being something like 30-19, something along those lines, but it was a game that Lone Star was very much in control of pretty much from the onset. Marvin Mims, what a freaking year for Marvin Mims. One of the all-time great seasons by any wide receiver in high school football history. The national record for, a single season receiving yardage with, I wrote down, 2,626 yards. That just doesn't even sound possible, just given that even as high octane as the high school game is nowadays, to get over 2,600 receiving yards in a single season is
and also 32 touchdowns. So he averaged, in 15 games, he was scoring, more than 2 touchdowns a game on average, which is, his numbers along, obviously, Garrett Rangel, you get a great young sophomore quarterback throwing the ball to him. But Marvin Mims' season this year, as far as wide receivers goes, is going to be one that's going to be talked about for a long time. For sure.
And that is a crazy subplot too, because you think back to the start of the season, they started the year with their backup quarterback. It was supposed to be Chandler Galban was supposed to be the starter for them, and he has an injury. And so they're throwing this little sophomore Garrett Rangel into the fire, having to take over this powerhouse program, and he has about as good a year as anyone could have expected for a kid his age.
He almost threw for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. So not a shabby debut for a varsity player.
What a year! And then they're able to advance to the state semifinals. And you look at the score of teams that they took down along the way. They played Highland Park again in the regional semifinals at AT&T Stadium, which is kind of the home away from home for Highland Park, with that being the site of many a state championship in recent years for them. And that game goes to overtime. So obviously the rematch, certainly a much different tone than that preseason meeting back in September. Lone Star's able to win that game, and then they go on to kind of lock down a Lancaster team that was just playing outstanding football, especially on the defensive end. And that team had all the confidence in the world. And we worked with a guy who had all the confidence in the world as far as that team's chances of winning a state championship and whatnot. And I still remember. Obviously, you remember Brian had to be at a wedding the weekend of the of the state semifinal game against Denton Ryan, and that certainly drew the ire of some of the folks at the Denton Record Chronicle, who Brian had been getting into a nice little friendly back and forth with on social media and whatnot. But that game then just goes like, again, just one of those weird games where just Lone Star just could not get anything going in their favor. The Denton Ryan defensive line was just so overwhelming, really kind of set the tone in that one, and they ended up losing 35-7. A very uncharacteristic end of the season, given the way that Lone Star had been playing. Still, though, you go 14-1. I guess the second deepest playoff run in program history, only trumped by, I guess, the 2015 team that went to the state title game. Still an incredible season, and obviously still a plenty promising foundation to build on for what's been kind of the benchmark for Frisco ISD football. And then you had obviously what happened on the girls basketball court with Liberty, which was able to make amends from last season after they were the state runner-up, and they won their first ever state championship. And when you hear that, you're probably thinking like, okay, so it was a team that just kind of banded together and took the experience from last season that they gained, and really kind of built off of that. No, they graduated 80% of their roster from last season. This team had 2 kids coming back, Jazzy Owens, Barnett, and Maya Jane. Everyone else was gone. So, you kind of throw last year as far as what the team accomplished kind of out the window in that respect. But nevertheless, though, even though the roster was completely different, that system of theirs never changed. And it was still a team that really hung its hat on playing this grinding brand of defense. You really got to see Jazzy Owens Barnett, just a sophomore, develop into one of the premier players in the state, really kind of put that thing on her back and was able to carry them into through a district schedule that was a little up and down. It wasn't a team that I recall having a whole lot of fanfare statewide when the postseason began. I was looking back over their schedule. They lost their last game of the regular season 33-28 against Lone Star. But then, just everything fell into place. They were just so incredible in terms of their late game execution in the playoffs. If you look at their games, the 4 games they played in rounds 3 through 6, those 4 games were decided by a combined 15 points. And then including
and how many overtimes?
There was, I know, the one against
because they played Centennial in the quarterfinals. A district rival, 32-31. But that score right there just kind of tells you, the type of game that they play. But College Station went to overtime. Midlothian went 3 overtimes. But you talked about their late game execution. They found a way, to win those games. And then obviously, in a very typical Liberty score in the championship game against Veterans Memorial, 35-26. If you hold your opponent to 26 points, you're going to win most times.
It's crazy
because you look at that game too. They give up 11 points in that first quarter. Veterans Memorial goes on a 9-0 run to end that. The rest of that game, how many points did Veterans Memorial score? They finished with 20. They had 14 points over the last 3 quarters combined.
Goodness. That was because I went back just to check. Because you see any team hold anyone in the playoffs to 26 points, you're wondering where that stacks up as far as their total body of work. They had 11 games where they held opponents to 25 points or less. This was an elite defensive team. So this one didn't even crack the top 10. But when you factor in the caliber of opponents and the stage of the season, there's a case to be made that was their best defensive performance of the season, all things considered. Chris,
you had that defense, but you also had in those playoff games the state semis. Lily, it's hard to say her last name, Zimkowicz, I want to say. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Lily, something like that.
Lily Z.
Yeah, Lily Z. We'll just call her Lily Z, but a great scorer, comes in that state semifinals game. She has a big game there, double digits that game. In that championship game, obviously Jazzy Owens Barnett, one of the best young players in the state. You can make the case she might even be. We just don't know yet how the next 2 years will go. But the way she played in that championship game, it was just you had that defense, but it was just every game you'd have someone would find a way to step up offensively, and they would get the job done. And it's just you're going to need those kind of performances if you want to win a state title in Texas, and they did. And that's crazy too, because you go back. I think I was telling Matt before we came on the podcast. It was Ross Rudy after the game. You talked about kind of the up and down district season, pre-district. Losing to Duncanville, anyone could probably lose to Duncanville, obviously, of how good they are, but they lost to Duncanville by 40 points. Yeah, they lost to Duncanville by 40 points, and he says in the press conference after they win state, that's on y'all. But bounce back from some of these really big losses early on to really great teams and then go on a state run is incredible, especially considering what Matt said, how much they lost just from last year's team that made it that far.
It's wild because you just don't see, you just don't see programs that do that having to reload to the extent that they did after coming so close the year prior and losing all of that senior leadership and having to basically throw a team with a completely different level of expectations into the fire like that. And then somehow being able to get over the hump. It's wild that this was the Liberty team that did it, as close as that program has been in, in years past. So yeah, obviously Lone Star football, Liberty girls basketball immediately jumped to mind. And then Colleen Stegman and the job that she did in the fall in cross country, winning the Class 5A state championship, dethroning longtime state queen pin to say McKinney North's London Culbreth, who had the first time in her distance running career at the high school level that she has not won a state championship. But yes, Stegman. She ran, I have it right here, a 17-17-1. She went on to be named the Gatorade Texas Cross Country Runner of the Year. So just a dominant season for her. And you kind of got a sense last spring, especially in track, how close she was to potentially maybe taking that throne from London Culbreth, with them as close as those two were in the 3,200 and the 1,600. And it's a shame that, we didn't really get to see the end of that high school rivalry get to materialize in the spring with, again, as decorated as those two athletes are at the 5A level, hands down the two best distance runners that classification has. Because, with London, you heard that there might have been an injury that was kind of holding her back and that her training might have been kind of off. It just sounds like a very unconventional fall for her. So perhaps, with kind of getting things right there, that perhaps you get a different product there in the spring for track. And it would have just been fun to see those two just throw down just a few more times with as much as they've accomplished. But yes, Colleen Stegman, obviously a massive, massive milestone, winning a state championship in the fall.
And she'll be back, won't she?
Oh yeah, I think she's still got 1 year left.
She's junior, right?
Yeah. So yeah.
So London's moving on to the college level, so they can postpone their college duels for a year, because Colleen still has more history to write at the high school level, hopefully.
Yeah, she's probably a pretty decisive favorite to have some success next season as a senior. And then there was one other team that I think kind of slipped beneath the cracks. And it's just when you don't win a championship or don't make a massive playoff run, this is just kind of what happens. But we're going to get to Allen in a bit, and one of the things we're going to talk about is Lovejoy Volleyball. And it's like you look at what Lovejoy Volleyball accomplished, but then you look at the team that gave them their toughest test of the postseason. And the Liberty Volleyball team was on a roll last season, and they played them and Lovejoy played in the regional quarterfinals. And in hindsight, you can make a case that, wherever Liberty was ranked at the time, that was probably maybe a tad too low, considering how well they played Lovejoy relative to how the rest of the state just got absolutely trucked by Lovejoy. And a lot of that was because Liberty had maybe the best volleyball player in the history of Frisco ISD in Jenna Wennis, who was just an absolute machine all season long. She had 27 kills in that match against Lovejoy, which is one of the best defensive teams in the state, bar none. And they were, they took them to 5 sets. I don't think Lovejoy,
that game 4 was probably the set of the year in volleyball. The 34-32.
Yeah.
And that was probably the set. But when you take into account those two teams and that level of play, and the fact that it goes 34-32, it's pretty incredible.
So yeah, in hindsight, that Liberty Volleyball team, I don't know if they'll get the love that they should, but when you look at just how incredible, Lovejoy was against everybody else, that it really does shine a light on how special that Lady Redhawks team was. So let's see. That was that's a look at just some notable takeaways from the year that was for Frisco ISD. Let's see. And
real quick on Frisco before we go away, and again, this is stuff that we didn't get to see play out. But soccer, a lot of the regular season was in the books, and that's going to be a big what might have been, because you look at the girls' side, you look at the state rankings. You had Independence at number 1, Lebanon Trail at number 3. Memorial at 4, Wakeland at 5, Liberty at 9. You had 5 teams in the top 10 there, and of course, the Frisco Wakeland boys coming off 4 straight trips to the state championship match, 2 championships in 2017 and 2018. We'll be telling these what might have been stories for a long time, but especially in soccer, I think more so than baseball and softball, because so much had been played. They were going into the last week of the regular season. and especially the pedigree that some of those Frisco programs have, particularly the Wakeland boys. It's another tough chapter, in just this whole episode.
Yeah, a chance to potentially see the Independence girls get their redemption against Highland Park. That goes by the wayside. And then for the Wakeland boys, I remember looking up that if they were to win state this year, I think that would have actually tied them like number 2 all time as far as boys soccer UIL state championships. So they had some history on the line this season that they'll have to try to, take another stab at next year. But yeah, they were on the short list of teams that got through the regular season undefeated. So it just shows that, that program was set up to do more great things come postseason time. Let's see. Let's shift gears and let's talk a little bit about the Colony. Let's see, Chris.
You look at it, they had a great sports year. It's pretty much every team that had a chance to be in the playoffs qualified. Obviously, spring sports we wouldn't know, but you'd like to think the way baseball was playing in pre-district, the way they had a lot of seniors playing there, they could have made a run to the playoffs. Obviously, softball, we'll get into them later, but we obviously know Jada Coleman, that senior class.
Yeah.
But you look at football, but just all across the board, this remarkable senior class they had, they said broke all these school records for scholarship money. Football senior class alone, they had a Fab Five. They had all these guys like Keith Miller, a 2-sports star. We'll talk about him in basketball in a minute too, but a great receiver going to go to Colorado. You've got Christian Gonzalez, a 4-star safety going to Colorado. Mikey Harrington, the quarterback, going to play college football as well. Marcus Moore going to Louisiana Monroe. And then Miles Price is going to Texas Tech. And Coach Rudy Randhow told me you should expect him to be a Heisman guy in 3 years. And I didn't get to watch Miles in the fall, but watching his highlights, I see.
Oh, he was great. Yeah.
I see some Tavon in him. There's definitely kind of a resemblance there. With football, obviously, they make the playoffs 8-3, a tough loss in that first round and by district. You go to all those guys, they're going to be losing a lot of guys on that football team, but they really like this freshman and sophomore classes they have rolling up. They're already doing great things. Obviously, before the school year kind of shut down. Great things training-wise in spring football in the weight room, kind of inching your records in there as young guys. Boys basketball, another playoff appearance under Cleve Ryan, their 3rd straight. Tied for 2nd in District 8-5A, but they got the 4th seed officially. They have a 2-point loss to 1 seed Colleyville Heritage in the first round. Another kind of playoff season there, but then they're going to lose Keith Miller. And then you've got Michael King just committed to York College as well. It's kind of a transfer from Plano West. And then, but you lose those guys. But again, you've got Tame Mosters, a 3-star basketball recruit. D1 offers keep coming in, it seems like, every week for him. Caden Scalafani, good shooter as well. So they like to think their playoff chances are good. Then girls basketball, I know anyone can attest to with this last 4-year run they had with Tamia Jones and Jewel Spears. Remarkable. They made it to the 3rd round every year. This round they did that again. Made it to regional semis twice. The first ever undefeated district season in 2017 with those 2 girls. When they came in, they said they were going to change the complexion of that gym in the record books. You make it 4 times to the 3rd round, you definitely change history there. It's going to be tough to lose those girls because you saw they scored so many points, a bulk of those points, and Tamia Jones was a remarkable defender, the district defensive MVP in that. Jewel Spear, one of the best scorers in all of America, going to Wake Forest, the number 82 recruit in the country. Tamia Jones going to SMU, like I said. Now you gotta step up for those girls next year. They still do return 3 of their 5 starters. Now it's just a matter of who's going to really step up and take the reins. You'd like to think Araya Cotto is going to do something like that because behind Jewel and Tamia, she was always scoring 9, 10, 12. She had 15 in the playoffs at one point. It's going to be a different look for the Colony girls basketball the next few years, but they still like what they have coming back. But obviously, there's no way you can just fill in for a Tamia Jones and a Jewel Spear and be like those 2 girls because it's rare that you get 2 seniors that good at the same time. Then their soccer teams, it's almost another what could have been. Boys soccer lost 3 district superlative winners, 4 of their seniors last year combined for 44 goals. 2nd place in the district. There's even Coach Weddle told me on paper, if you look at it, there's no way they should have been in the playoffs. They just kind of resurrect their season the second half. And Coach Weddle's not a defensive coach. And they became a defensive team there the second half of the season. A couple of 1-0 wins to end that year. They weren't an offensive powerhouse by any means, but they would nullify your opponent's strengths. They clinched another playoff spot there. Kind of remarkable how they did that. Girls soccer under Tommy Ray, another soccer team that made They qualified for a playoffs for a third straight year. They keep climbing under him. And that was really one where you're thinking, what could they have done? Because anytime I talked to Coach Ray, it was always, this is the perfect team. Because you had that, you know how important senior leadership is. The college level, especially the high school level, they had 4 seniors they really loved. One of them was hurt for a long time, but he raved about all of them and what they all did. And they had a really great young crop of talent, freshmen and sophomores, just seemingly scoring at will, a young goalie. You'd like to think they could have gotten a couple rounds deep, especially when you look at their playoff matchups. You had to think that was definitely going to be in their favor. And then you go to the spring sports, baseball, like I said, played well. So they had some of the best players in the state. Stat-wise, 2 different kids finished them on the top 100 in the state in 5A stats. One of them top 10 in batting average. And then softball, I think we all know.
What could have been?
What could have been there? Jada Coleman, first time pitching since he was 8 years old, goes in with a 12-0 record on the mound, 0.7 ERA, 42 stolen bases this year, and they only played 1 district game, if you put that in perspective, over a 700 batting average. You had her, J.C. Hamlin, Jody Duncan. You had to think this team had the looks of another state title like they won in 2017.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, I mean, you think that – I mean, Jada Coleman just deserves, like, one of those players on that short list of players who just deserves a better finality to their high school career than this. I mean, with the history that she was chasing as far as being in contention for, like, national records and whatnot. And just, I mean, seriously, just on that short list of, like, the best hitters that the Dallas area has ever seen in high school softball. And, I mean, yeah, I just remember back when she was, like, a freshman, and Justin Thomas, you know, your predecessor, just when he would be reading off just some of the stats that she was putting up all the way back then as a freshman. I mean, it just didn't seem possible that a player would be capable of that sort of production. But yeah, I mean, she just kept on getting better and better and better. And of course, she is an incredible pitcher. Of course.
Right. So, what would she have done as a pitcher if she had pitched all these years as well?
I know. Yeah. That's the thing.
She was a young elementary schooler, and she's 12-0 and not even giving up a run per start. Like, what could she have done if she was a pitcher and hitter at the same time for these last 10 years? An athlete like her is so rare to find.
Oh yeah, it's a once in a generation type. And yeah, I mean, like you just said, this was probably just pound for pound the most talented athletic class that the Colony has ever had. So, I mean, whether or not it's just a sign of things to come as far as the sort of talent that area has coming aboard, we'll see. But yes, a nice little year for the Colony all around. Let's see. Let's talk a little Flower Mound, which was, I'd say, as far as pound for pound, schools that had, I mean, which school last year had more success than Flower Mound High School? I mean, the joke was coining it the year of the Jaguar with, I mean, just the multiple state titles and just all around success like that high school had never experienced. So how are they going to build off of that? They were able to make the playoffs pretty consistently in everything. As far as the fall sports go, the volleyball team was ranked #1 in the state for a good chunk of the season. They were able to go undefeated in district, and then they went. We all knew it was going to come down to them and Byron Nelson in the 3rd round, just like it did last year. And the winner of that match was probably headed to state and could very well be the front runner to win a state title. Byron Nelson did exact some revenge though on Flower Mound. They won that match in 4 sets in was probably just pound for pound, maybe the best atmosphere I've ever been a part of as far as a high school volleyball match goes. I mean, those 2 communities just showed out for that one. It was a blast to be a part of. I had to stand on the baseline and do all my reporting and recording during that because there just wasn't a seat in the stands for anybody. It was a wild atmosphere. They still had a great year, and they're going to be great next year too. They still have Kaylee Cox, Angelique Sear coming back. They do lose Sarah Martinez, their star libero. So otherwise, though, that's still a program that's primed for some pretty good stuff, heading into next season. The football team, they were able to actually win their first ever playoff game, and they did so in pretty dramatic fashion. It was with 10 seconds left in the 4th quarter that they scored on a short little touchdown pass from Blake Short to Reed Touchstone, and were able to beat, I want to say it was Keller, 31-30. Just again a solid year for the Jaguars. But I mean, obviously the story of Flower Mound area football in 2019 was Marcus and the Marauders having their best season since the mid 90s. They were able to go 3 rounds deep. They won a district title, all sorts of just clutch heroics, winning multiple overtime games. They just had a knack for again making plays when it mattered. Very Liberty girls basketball-esque. Garrett Nussmeier, their star quarterback, recently committed to LSU. He's on pace to rewrite the record books for Marcus quarterbacks. You had just such a dynamic offense surrounding them with, Tyson Edwards, an all-area selection of ours, J. Michael Sturdivant, who was a move-in. He just dominated as a deep threat for them, and a nice, well-rounded defense with lots of solid senior leadership. There was a team that really did look the part of one of the better ones in the area, and a team that's probably poised to do some pretty similarly big things this fall. As far as what happened in basketball, both the boys and the girls at Flower Mound High made the playoffs. The Marcus boys were able to make the playoffs, going right down to the wire, a team that was kind of thought to maybe be a little bit on the outside looking in at the start of district, and then they scored a number of upset victories to just wedge their way in at the last minute. The Flower Mound boys, though, they were able to win their I believe the second playoff game in their history. And they did so with just a fun to watch, just high IQ brand of basketball, just dead-eye three-point shooters. They played at a lightning fast tempo. It was a fun team to watch. But they were able to have some success. And it was a really loaded, competitive District 6A that had 4 or 5 teams that were all in contention for a district championship. And then as far as the girls, they finished second in the district. They were in the position to win a district title. And then Irving MacArthur had one of the best teams in the state. They were able to get their act together. They got back to full strength for the second half of district, and they kind of dominated. As far as the biggest story though for Flower Mound girls basketball, actually came, I guess, away from the program in a different respect, because obviously the most prestigious player to ever pass through that program, Lauren Cox, had some nice little personal history. I believe last month, and she was the 3rd overall pick in the WNBA draft, selected by the Indiana Fever. So obviously a very nice little moment for the Flower Mound girls basketball program, seeing Lauren Cox and all of her hard work get to realize her professional basketball dream. And then as far as kind of as we've alluded to with just what could have been, I mean, right in that same vein as the Wakeland boys soccer team, the Flower Mound girls, I mean, a team that was undefeated when the season was canceled, a defense that had allowed 4 goals all season long. A team that was certainly poised to do some pretty big things in the postseason. They were ranked number 1 in their region, I believe number 1 or number 2 in the state, depending on which poll you checked. And then I do kind of feel like we missed out on some pretty fun action as far as the stick and ball sports go, with both Flower Mound and Marcus in both baseball and softball in position to potentially win a district title and produce some pretty fun fireworks between those 2 programs. Let's see. So that is a look at Flower Mound. I don't know how I'm going to make it through Allen. I'm already running out of breath. So let's see. To round this thing out, with a look at the year that was for Allen. Let's start with the good. Let's start with what obviously, I mean, it has been death taxes in this program, just absolutely dominating every crevice of its sport for the last now decade plus. The Allen wrestling program did not slow down. An 11th consecutive state championship. For my money, regardless of sport, it is the greatest dynasty in Texas high school athletics. And that might sound like hyperbole. It's not. Imagine if there's anything to compare it to, I always think if it's the equivalent of if Allen's football team, with the stature that they have, if Allen's football team won 11 consecutive state championships and every playoff game that they had, they won by 35 points. I mean, it's that level of dominance. The fact that Allen's wrestling program has, again, for as long as they have, the fact that they continue to win by the margins that they do, to where there's not another program in the state that can even compete with them at the moment. You look at them at the state meet, they've set every conceivable record that you can at the state meet, but they were able to rake up 203.5 points this season. That was more than the combined total of second place and third place. I mean, there's nobody in the ballpark of them.
What percentage of high schools would you say have wrestling programs? Because of the nine schools that I primarily cover, I don't have any wrestling programs. And these are big schools. These are the Mesquites and the Rowletts and Saxe and whatnot. I don't have any wrestling programs.
That is
so I'm just curious. I mean, obviously their dominance speaks for itself, but I was kind of curious to see if you had an idea what percentage of high schools at the 6A level have wrestling programs.
I know. I mean, there's only 2 classifications, so that's, there's just a 6A and a 5A. So it's kind of like, some of the other solo sports in that respect. I am surprised, though, that none of the East Dallas County stuff that you cover has just anything wrestling related. I know that nothing even like what
does.
Okay. Nothing like even with the with the swim programs where it's just like a Garland ISD swim team or something like that, or.
Yeah, I mean, Mesquite ISD has one swimming coach for all 5. I mean, every athlete represents their own school, but there's not enough athletes that are swimmers to hire a coach for each school. Rowlett and Saxe don't even have swimming teams. Now, granted, they're supposed to complete the natatorium out in GISD, which they're hoping will pump up some interest in the sport. But yeah, I mean, there's certain sports, wrestling being one of them, that still kind of qualify to me as kind of niche sports, because it's usually the more affluent high schools that have them. And usually when they have those programs, a lot of people flock there. So there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, because Allen, just the job that they've done, and it's a program that really is like the definition of a feeder system. Like a lot of these kids, when they get to, the varsity level, it's not like they're just picking up the sport for the first time. They've been wrestling for years. So they're already primed and ready to go. And yeah, it's just and that's the thing that's just kept this machine going, is that you look at the kids that, that won state titles for them this year, the kids that placed prominently in that lineup, and like the majority of their lineup is always coming back. It's never a program that has to worry about this mass exodus of seniors and there's nothing left in the tanks. They do such a good job of getting those younger kids primed and ready to contribute. And it's led to, just an incredible run. There's really no sign of it slowing down anytime soon. It's, again, just a question as to how much greater the heights that this program can go to are. Because, like I said, there's teams around the state that can beat them, like in Oklahoma and whatnot, and in the Midwest and whatnot. But as far as Texas goes, there's no comparison. They're without peer. It's incredible just how dominant they've been all this time. And then you look elsewhere, though, and in some of the other sports, like your footballs and your boys basketballs, it was teams that had really, really grand expectations and for the regular season looked the part. But I think obviously you'd have to look back in hindsight, though, and say that they left a little bit of meat on the bone once you got to the postseason. With the football team, they're approaching. I think they're within earshot and might have a chance actually this upcoming season to set the state record for the longest regular season winning streak. They've not lost a regular season game since September 28th of 2012 was that Capel game. And yeah, I know.
And they don't shy away from people. It's not like they're lining up a bunch of lame ducks in the non-district. They're playing heavyweights every year.
Oh yeah, they played 2 teams that finished their non-district schedule was 2 teams that I believe finished the year ranked in the state's top 15 or so. In Cedar Hill, did they start against Cedar Hill? Yeah, I think they did. I forget. And then Dickinson in week 2. But then they went on to have again another undefeated season. That's let's see, what did I write down? It's the 8th consecutive perfect season that they've had. Didn't meet a ton of resistance along the way. But then in the second round, they drew Rockwall, which was that team that you think last year in the area round, how great a game that was when Rockwall, who again didn't have anywhere near the fanfare that Allen did, but they have a transcendent wide receiver in Jackson Smith and Jigba and some terrific talent at the other skill positions. And they were one of the few teams in the state that could score just touchdown for touchdown with Allen. And they gave them a heck of a game last year. And the pieces were kind of in place for where there was a lot of talk that this could be a potential upset if those 2 teams rematched. And I did not get to see this game firsthand. This was I was on state volleyball duty this afternoon covering Lovejoy and Plano West. But it sounds like that game against Rockwall was, it was on the short list of the best playoff games all postseason. It was actually that. And then I think the next day was when you had that crazy Geyer Cedar Hill game where Geyer staged that just incredible comeback. Those 2 games, arguably the 2 best of the entire postseason. But then you had Allen, though, and Rockwall, which, what was the final score? I had it, let's see, what was it? What did I miss it? Oh, yeah, 60-59. Sorry, I lost in the text there.
And I'm trying to remember if I picked Rockwall to pull that off in our picket line. Because I remember talking and said never count a Rodney Webb team out.
I know.
And especially with Jackson Smith and Njigba, who is maybe I'd have to go back to my memory bank, but, short-term memory is the best receiver I've seen at the high school level.
I know we just heaped a whole lot of praise at the start of this on Marvin Mims, but yes, the level of dominance that Jackson Smith and Njigba showed is something else in its own right. And I think he had 4 touchdowns in the first quarter alone of this game against Allen. Chris,
ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he was unstoppable. He had like a one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. He was a walking highlight reel that game. They had no answer for him. But then it comes down to the very, very end. They score a touchdown to tie it up, and then they go for 2 points. Again, like the requisite chances that you have to take, and if you're going to beat a team like Allen in the postseason, and Rodney Webb has just that perfect level of crazy to where he's willing to throw it out when he has to. And it was just a wild play that ends up with – it wasn't even the quarterback that ends up throwing the pass. It was like an end around, like kind of like the –
I believe so.
It was like an end around that leads to a contested catch in the end zone. It was just a wild sequence that puts them up by 1 point, and then Allen gets. I think they were just about to get past midfield or whatnot, and Raylan Sharp, their quarterback, he gets stopped on 4th down, just a couple yards shy of the line, and Rockwall scores an incredible victory. As far as Raylan Sharp, who wound up winning district MVP in 9-6A, you really get to see Chris, we've talked about the, as I look behind those posters of yours, the 2016 NBA Finals. We've talked about those a time or two in your tenure here. And in Game 7, everybody remembers the LeBron block and the Kyrie shot, but people kind of forget how incredible Draymond Green played in defeat.
Oh, exactly. Draymond was going to be the MVP of that series. They win that game. It's not even a question.
It's just crazy in hindsight, because when you have performances that don't end in victory, how it's just a footnote in that respect. And Raylan Sharp in defeat in that game, he totaled 571 yards and 6 touchdowns. Just an outstanding game for that kid to go out on. But again, it's just, Rockwall won and they got to the state semifinals. So again, it just kind of gets lost in history there, but absolutely going out on his shield in that respect. But then you had the boys basketball team. They won their first outright district title since 1992. They ran the table in 9-6A. And I mean, for the second straight year, had one of their greatest regular seasons ever. And then for the second straight year, that second round of the playoffs snuck up on them. And then this time it was Waco Midway that did Allen in with a premature exit. For the second straight year, that team, which, looked like heading into the playoffs, a team that, very well could be, playing in the regional tournament. And then I believe they were ranked, top 5 in the state each of these past 2 years, and then upset in the second round. It just goes to show, man. You never know. And this was 2 years removed from them winning a state championship. You just never know when everything is going to fall into place. And when again, you just catch a team on a hot night and you just don't have it. And Allen's team was centered around 3 stars with Manny Obaseki and Bryce Kennedy and Thailand Elder. And, those 3, as consistent as they've been all season, they were just basically a gear short in that second round matchup against Waco Midway. Just about 13 to 15 points, which is a step down from the usual 18 to 22 that those 3 are usually capable of. And then you had the girls basketball team, which ran the table for the first half of district play. Then they went 1-5 over the second half and tailspin their way into 4th place and ended up drawing a surging Saxe team in the first round. And they ended up going 1 and done 1 year after making it to the state tournament. And then the boys basketball team gets the news just a couple weeks ago that Mandy Obaseki's transferring to John Paul II, and all of a sudden now it's a strange year in all things considered for the 2 basketball programs. With soccer, I mean, the boys were in position to repeat as district champions. The girls had 1 loss on their record when the season was canceled. So I mean, these are 2 teams that made it to the regional tournament last year, and who knows how long until you run into a team like a Prosper or any of those teams over in East Texas. Vandegrift down south or whatnot. I mean, so it's, who knows what the postseason run would have looked like for either, but definitely teams that had positioned themselves at least to have a bit of success there in the playoffs. And then with Lovejoy, I guess to wrap this thing up here, the volleyball team, they, as we talked about earlier on in the Frisco portion, Lovejoy Volleyball was back on the mountaintop.
Speaking of dynasties.
Yeah. I mean, you want to take a stab at at the state tournament streak that Lovejoy is on. They made it to the state tournament for the 10th time in 12 years. Just an absurd level of dominance for that program, and they're able to hoist the trophy for the 7th time. It was the first year back as head coach for Ryan Mitchell, who all he knows are state championships at Lovejoy. He was the one who authored the dynasty way back when that program was first getting going, and yeah, it was a unique team in the sense that it was one that didn't really carry much in terms of really grand expectations into the season, just because of the class that they had graduated from the year before. And a lot of these kids were going to be back next season. A lot of that core with Cecily Bramschreiber, who was named the MVP of the state tournaments, one of the best outside hitters in Texas. And Lexi Collins, Avery Carlson, their star setter, Callie Kamoa, transfer from Allen, who just slid right in, was one of the stalwarts of that great defense of theirs. They're going to be back with a vengeance next season and looking to build off of this dominant run. We talked about just the job that Liberty did pushing them to the brink in the 3rd round, and then you look in hindsight, look what they did in the state championship match against Canyon Randall, who was number 2 in the state. Lovejoy was number 1. So you're thinking we're setting up for just this thrilling finale to the season, and Lovejoy just sweeps them. And it's not even competitive down the stretch. They were just, goodness, they made short work of everybody outside of Liberty in the postseason. And yeah, they're back on the mountaintop once again for the 7th time in their program's history. And then you had what happened over in cross country, and this was certainly a surprise at the time, with seeing, as I roll out to the district meet already to write my story on, let's see, how many minutes is London Culbreth going to win by this year and whatnot. And then sure enough, Lovejoy has this little freshman, Amy Moorfield, who hands London her first ever postseason loss in UIL high school competition. And there's the photo of that I believe one of the team photographers got as it's just a few minutes into the race, but they're rounding one of the stretches, and London and Amy are going stride for stride, and then it was the Lovejoy photographer. Clearly Amy knew the photographer, so there's a photo of her just smiling as she's running in stride, and London's just got this real dead-eyed focused look, and Amy just having the time of her life out there, just running and trying to match wits with the one of the greatest distance runners in the history of the sport in the UIL, and she ends up winning that race going away, hands London a surprising loss there, and Amy Moorfield dominates the 10-5A cross country meet. She then goes on to finish 3rd at state, only a freshman too. So again, when Colleen Stegman goes off and graduates, this could very well be the next in line to take that cross country and track throne for that matter, as far as the distance events go. So yeah, I need some water.
Deep breath.
I know, man. That's a lot. I should have segmented this out better to where I don't have to do my 2 1s back to back like this. Oh boy. Let's see. So yeah, that is a look at, I guess, four more markets. We are down to, I guess, the final 4. We'll touch on those next week and close up shop here. Let's see. Otherwise, yeah, that'll do it for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. Chris, Devin, appreciate you guys for tagging along. Folks, hope you all are staying safe. We'll be back at it next week to do this exercise one more time and close this thing out. So until then, folks, enjoy your week, and we will talk to y'all later.